Planning to start a mobile bartending business? You might want to think twice. Not because you shouldn't do it, it's because there's a real gap between what this looks like from the outside and what it actually costs. And that gap is exactly what this video is for. The pitch is genuinely appealing. Low startup cost, no slow Tuesday nights burning cash since you only operate when you're booked, and a growing market built around weddings, corporate events, and private parties. Here's what most people planning this business miss entirely. This isn't one business, it's two, with wildly different margins, and which one you're even legally allowed to run depends on which state you're standing in. In one version, margins can run as high as 88%. In the other, 20 to 40%. The difference comes down to a single question: who's actually buying the alcohol? And in at least one major state, one of those two versions might not be legal for you to run at all. So which version is actually available to you, and which one is the real business? That's what we're figuring out today. One quick note before the numbers start. Every figure in this video is well-researched and checked against multiple sources, but research can still contain honest mistakes, and costs and regulations shift by state, city, and sometimes zip code. Treat these as your benchmark, not a quote for your specific situation. This video is for educational purposes only and is not legal, tax, financial, or business advice. Always do your own research and due diligence before making any business decision. A second note specific to this episode. Alcohol service and liquor licensing laws for mobile bars vary enormously by state and can determine which business model is even legal where you live. Verify your specific state's rules directly, ideally with a local attorney, before making any decision based on this video. The first cost, the one that stays genuinely low across almost every version of this business, a bar, a vehicle, and real glassware get you most of the way in. Total startup costs typically run $6,000 to $12,000, covering a portable bar setup, cocktail equipment, glassware, and a reliable vehicle to transport it all. Most new operators start with a portable or satellite bar rather than a full rig or converted horse trailer. Most event spaces simply don't have room for anything larger, and the smaller setup keeps both cost and complexity down while you're still learning the business. You genuinely don't need professional bartending experience to start. Learning 10 to 15 popular cocktails through a weekend class or online videos is enough for most events, since clients consistently care more about professional, friendly service than flair bottle tricks. One bartender can reasonably serve 50 to 75 guests an hour. Past 100 guests, you're realistically staffing 2 people minimum, which is worth building into pricing from the very first quote, not discovering the week of the event. Liquor liability insurance belongs in that same first quote conversation. Serving alcohol at someone else's event carries real exposure if a guest is overserved, and coverage sized for that reality is a genuine cost of doing business, not an optional extra to add once a venue asks for proof of it. The hidden trap, the one where the law decides your business model before you do, in some states, you may not get to choose which version of this business you're running. Here are the two real models. Bartender for hire. The client buys and provides all the alcohol, and you're purely providing the labor and expertise to serve it well. Full service. You supply the alcohol yourself and build its cost into what you charge. Now here's where state law decides the question for you in some places. Texas's own alcohol commission is direct about it. Current law only issues alcohol permits to a permanent physical address, and a mobile operation, by definition, doesn't have one. That's why most Texas mobile bars operate what the industry calls dry hire, where the client provides the alcohol entirely. California takes the same basic position. A mobile operation can't sell alcohol at all without an underlying brick-and-mortar liquor license attached to the business. That single rule can eliminate the full-service model entirely in a state like California, for anyone without an existing licensed physical location. The bartender for hire model sidesteps the problem completely, since you're never the one selling the alcohol in the first place, only serving what the client already purchased. Building a business plan around the higher margin full service model without first confirming your state permits it for a mobile operation is exactly how a promising plan quietly becomes illegal before the first event ever gets booked. The real engine, the one hiding in a single word, who's buying? The margin gap between these two models is enormous, and it's not about better sales, it's about inventory risk. So once you know which model your state actually allows, where does the real profit sit? In the bartender for hire model, margins can run as high as 88% because you're carrying almost no inventory cost or risk. The client already bought the alcohol. You're being paid for skill, reliability, and showing up on time, not for product markup. In the full service model, margins settle to a real but meaningfully lower 20 to 40% because now you're carrying the cost and the risk of every bottle, whether the guests drink it all or not. Run a simple worked comparison. Book 8 to 10 events a month at roughly $500 to $600 each, and that's $4,800 to $6,000 in monthly gross activity either way. The bartender for hire version of that same booking volume keeps close to 90% of it as real profit. The full service version keeps a real but meaningfully smaller 20 to 40% once liquor cost is subtracted out. Real operating costs apply to both models regardless. Staff wages typically run 10 to 25% of revenue, payment processing 2.5 to 3.5%, and marketing another 1 to 5%, all coming off the top before either margin figure becomes real take-home money. The real money in mobile bartending, the higher margin version of this business, was never about being a better bartender. It's about never touching the liquor bottle's cost in the first place. And in some states, that's not just the smarter model, it's the only one you're legally allowed to run. A real, currently listed business puts concrete numbers behind what this can scale into. A mobile bartending business in Tampa, Florida is listed for sale at $96,900, reporting $62,000 in annual cash flow, and described by the listing itself as having events already booked well into next year. That's a real business, generating real, substantial income, built on the same fundamentals covered in this video. Low physical overhead, event-based bookings instead of daily walk-in traffic, and a margin structure that depends entirely on which side of the alcohol purchase the business sits on. So let's run the two real outcomes. The optimistic case. You confirm your state's specific rules before choosing a model. Lean into bartender for hire where it's legally available for the stronger margin, and build toward that 10 events a month booking pace through referrals and venue relationships. Margins track toward that 88% ceiling. Monthly profit climbs toward the $6,000 range and beyond as bookings grow, and the business scales with genuinely minimal added risk per event. The realistic case. You build a business plan around full-service bartending because the idea of selling drinks sounds like the real business, without confirming your state allows a mobile operation to sell alcohol at all. Best case, you're now carrying real inventory cost and risk for a 20 to 40% margin instead of the higher margin alternative. Worst case, in a state like California, the entire model you built the business plan around was never legally available to you in the first place. Same skills, same events, same market demand. The entire gap between those two outcomes comes down to whether state law got checked before the business model got chosen, not after. So is it worth it? If you're picturing one universal mobile bartending business, that version doesn't exist. It's two different businesses with two different margins, and your state decides which ones are even on the table. What's true is that this remains a genuinely low overhead, high margin potential business for owners who confirm their state-specific rules before building a business plan around assumptions. For someone willing to check state law first and lean into whichever model it permits, this can be one of the higher margin small businesses on this entire channel. For someone building the business plan first and checking the legal question later, the state you live in may have already decided how this story ends. Last reminder, alcohol service and licensing laws vary enormously by state and can determine which business model is legal. This is not legal or business advice. Verify your specific state's rules directly, ideally with a local attorney, before making any decision based on this video. Remember this: the cocktail was never the product. Knowing exactly whose money bought the bottle it came out of is. Get that answer right for your specific state, and the rest of this business is just showing up on time with a smile.